Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's program. Thank you for joining us. Tonight is program 212, share number 212. Tonight we have a really special program. Thank you, everybody, for joining on this winter night. And it's going to be really special tonight. So thanks for joining. And we have limited time, so I want to really get into it. Again, for anybody who joins for the first time, every Sunday night in this program, it's a place where we talk through things that are going on. We have therapists, we have rabbis, we have speakers, just to really give a deep, honest discussion. And, we've been doing this almost 5 years. And again, I want to thank everybody. If anybody wants to join our WhatsApp chats, you can WhatsApp me at 732-314-1710. And I'll add you to the Coach Menachem community chats where we can post who the speakers and who's coming. Again, thank you for the advertising sponsors, the Lakewood Scoop, Elinario of Town Central, and Chayla Kaufman from JCN. And again, for anybody who's here the first time, every Sunday night at 9:30, we have an amazing program. Next week, December 15th, we're going to have a powerful program with world-famous rabbi speaker, Rabbi Daniel Katz from Israel. The topic is a Torah guide to the law of attraction. Does it really work? Is it kosher? Can it really manifest miracles? So please join us. Rabbi Daniel, as you know, has been on before. He's amazing. And again, tonight's program is 212. We're going to first start off with our host, Coach Menachem Bernfeld. Open it up tonight. Everybody's excited. What are we here for tonight, Menachem?
Oh yeah. So I want to welcome everyone to another Let's Get Real with Coach Menachem. Baruch Hashem, we're doing number 212. And tonight we have the honor to have Dr. Demartini, for those who have heard about him. And for those who didn't, we'll hear. It's never too late. But we've had many programs in the past, and like we're doing 212 tonight, and heard many different modalities, different ideas, different concepts. So I would say most of us are learning, are growing, feel like there is movement. But there's always those who, after all this and they're listening to the programs and they feel a little bit lost, or they feel stuck. They don't feel anything is working. And even for those who do feel movement, sometimes you have the thought of, when am I going to get the answer already? It's nice. I'm learning. I'm growing. It's amazing, but there's so much going on in my life. There's so, all different areas. When am I going to get the answer? And I'll tell you the truth, hopefully tonight, but, we say that every Sunday night. When people heard that Dr. John Demartini is joining our program, many facilitators called. And, once they start, I couldn't even stop them. They just went on and on. It's just amazing to hear from them how they said this really works. It changed their life. They've had breakthroughs, and how important it is, especially for the Jewish community, how important these ideas are. And many of, the Jewish, those learned, they said they have many from our Sfarim, the books, that all these ideas you can find by the Jewish community. So just to put it together, so just amazing to hear how it's something that we can all use in our life and actually make change. Somebody mentioned to me, they can actually tell you, they can't tell you exactly how many sessions, but after 15 or 20 sessions, you walk out having the answers. And how many times you go to therapy, you go for years, and you go on, and you feel like, okay, so where's this going? It's getting a little bit better, but what's the answer? So here we are. We want to know, what's the secret? Dr. Demartini, what's this breakthrough? What's the secret? And we're only giving you an hour. So let's get started. Unless you have to mute.
Yeah. Okay, Dr. Demartini, I'm just going to read your bio, a short version, and then you'll take it up. Dr. John Demartini is a polymath, a world-renowned human behavior expert. He has 5 decades of research across multiple disciplines. He's worked and has been described by students as the most comprehensive body of work, an extensive library of wisdom, as well as wisdom of the highest, most valuable order. Dr. Demartini's mission and vision is to share his knowledge and wisdom that empowers you to become a master of your own life and destiny. His education curriculum ranges from personal growth seminars to corporate empowerment programs. He shares life, business, financial relationships, empowerment strategies, and empowerment tools that have stood the test of time. Go to his website, drmartini.com. And just want to mention one other thing. If anybody knows Dina Friedman from Israel, Dina Friedman is one of the biggest facilitators from Dr. Martini courses. Dr. John Martini, an honor to have you here tonight. The floor is yours.
Is there a particular thing you want me to start with? You mentioned something the other day, but what would be most valuable for everyone? What would be the topic you would want me to address first? Because I got so much. Hi, Samuel. Hi, Susan.
Let's talk about Menachem. Should we go with the like getting out of the depression thing?
Well, we're looking for change. We're looking for the answers.
Well, okay.
I would say if you can tell us in general the ideas, and then the questions will bring us more practical.
That's perfect. Okay. When I was 23 years old and I was entering into professional school, I asked myself a question. Why do some people walk their talk and some people limp their life? Why do some people do what they say and others don't? Why are some people inspired and others despired? I realized in the research at the time that each individual lives by a set of priorities, a set of values, things that are most to least important in their life, and that they had a unique hierarchy of values that were fingerprint specific. No two people have the same exact set of values. These values are derived from the judgments that we've made throughout our own development. Everything that we have judged leaves an emptiness that we want to fill, and it drives our values. Whatever's highest on our value list, we spontaneously are inspired to do. My highest value is teaching. I spontaneously love teaching. I do it every day. I just came out of filming. I did another teaching this morning. I have one more after this. So I love doing it. So whatever's highest on your value, you spontaneously are inspired to do. And whatever's lower on your values, you require motivation to do, external motivation. And external motivation, extrinsic motivation cannot compete with intrinsic drive. Now, many people, and this is something that David Hume, the philosopher, addressed, there are oughts and is when it comes to values. And if you ask somebody what their values are, many times, instead of saying what their life actually demonstrates, they'll say what they think it ought to be, to fit in and conform. And which is great. Conformity is essential for society. It keeps us having order. But each individual wants to make a difference. And they don't make a difference completely fitting in. They make a difference by expressing their uniqueness. Carl Jung, the philosopher, said, we live in a world that we want to be ourselves, but we're living in a world that wants us to be something other than ourselves. Everyone around us is projecting their hierarchy of values onto us and demonstrating their love through those values. And so we want to be loved, but we can't possibly be in everybody's values and live. There's an old philosopher that said, I'd rather have the whole world against me than my own soul. And your soul is the real authentic expression of what you value most. If you study ontology, you'll see that your ontological identity revolves around your highest value. Your epistemological area of expertise and where you'll excel revolves around your highest value. And your teleological purpose, the thing that's most meaningful and inspiring spontaneously, revolves around your highest value. So knowing what your values are is very crucial if you want to go and master your life, you want to have fulfillment, because the very highest value, which Aristotle called the end in mind, Maimonides actually referenced this in one of his writings. If we go and fulfill our highest value, we have fulfillment. Mine happens to be teaching, but I've met people of all different walks. Some people are dedicated to raising beautiful children. Some people are dedicated to building business. Some people are dedicated to social structure and contribution. Some people are dedicated to their spiritual quest. Many people I've met from the communities of Judaism have been dedicated to their spiritual quest. That's a very common thing I see in almost every Jewish, particularly Orthodox Jewish. I see people really dedicated to their spiritual quest and their communities. Some people are very dedicated to their health and their fitness. Some people are dedicated to their family structure, some to business, some to making wealth. None of them are wrong. None of them are right. They're just unique, and everybody's needed in society. We need, everybody's needed because each person fills in a gap that other people are not experts in. So identifying what that hierarchy of values is, it dictates how we perceive, how we decide, and how we act. It dictates our destiny. Tell me what your values are, I'll tell you where you're headed. Tell me what your values are, I'll tell you how you manage money. Tell me what your values are, you tell me what you're going to be disciplined, reliable, and focused on. Tell me what your highest values, and I'll tell you where you're going to excel and expand and prosper in. So this is the first thing that I think people can benefit by getting clear about what they're really committed to. Because many people are clouded because they compare themselves to others instead of compare their daily actions to what they value most. And when they compare themselves to others, as Ralph Waldo Emerson said, envy is ignorance and imitation is suicide. The moment we try to be second at being somebody else instead of first at being ourselves, we diminish our potential, we question ourselves, we depreciate ourselves, we think we sabotage, we wonder why we're not disciplined, reliable, and focused, because we're trying to be something that's not really our identity, our highest value. So that's a crucial component. Then we go and we realize that anything that supports our values, our hierarchy of values, particularly our highest, we label good. And anything that challenges our values, we tend to label bad. And so our amygdala, which is a subcortical region in the brain, seeks those things that support it and tries to avoid the things that challenge it. It seeks the prey, tries to avoid the predator. It seeks the support, tries to avoid the challenge. But we have been proven that maximum growth and development occurs at the border of the two. We need both support and challenge. When you really love somebody, you're going to support and challenge them. If you get only support, you stay juvenilely dependent. If you get only challenge, you become precociously independent. If you get a combination of the two, you get loved for both sides, and you get what actually makes us grow. If we have an overprotective mother, we might have an assertive father to balance it. If we have an over-challenging mother, we might have a passive father. But nature has a beautiful way of blending the androgyny of the male and female or energies to make sure that we get to know what love is to help us grow. So my work is helping people identify what they value most and to start prioritizing life. If you don't fill your day with the very highest priority actions, it fills up with low priority distractions that self-depreciate you. Anytime you try to do something that's not really engaging and not really highest on your values, you'll end up wondering why you can't stay focused. Why are you not disciplined? You'll also move the blood glucose and oxygen from the forebrain and the medial prefrontal cortex into the amygdala, which will make you want to avoid and seek, which will make you distracted by intrusive thoughts, which will hold you back from achieving, and it'll make you question your existence and make you vulnerable to envying other people or being jealous of other people. Now, depression, we asked about depression. I like to define depression as a comparison of your current reality to a fantasy that you're addicted to. Now, I've had the opportunity to work with depression clients by the thousands, and I see them every week. And I found a common denominator to it. So I'd like to address that if that's okay. By the way, is what I'm saying so far useful so far? Yeah. So I found 15 most common reasons why people are depressed. So maybe if you want to take a note or two, it might be useful. The first one was an unrealistic expectation on other people to be one-sided. Now, if I went to you and I said, you're always kind, you're never cruel, you're always nice, you're never mean, you're always positive, you're never negative, you're always generous, you're never stingy, you're always peaceful, never wrathful, always considerate, never inconsiderate. There's a part of you that would go, not exactly. I'm not always one-sided. How many would agree with that? Not always one-sided. If I said to you, you're always mean, you're never nice, you're always cruel, you're never kind, and I went the opposite pole, you would immediately say intuitively, no, that's not it either. But if I said to you, sometimes you're nice when your values are supported as a pussycat. Sometimes you're mean as a tiger when your values are challenged. Sometimes you're generous when things go in line with your values. Sometimes you're stingy when people want something you don't want to give them. So I looked at myself and found out I had all of it. I was nice, mean, kind, cruel, positive, negative, honest, dishonest. I had every trait I found in the Oxford Dictionary. I went through 4,628 traits. I found I had them all. Nothing was missing in me. I believe that fulfillment is when you realize nothing's missing in you and you don't try to get rid of half of yourself and try to be one-sided. There was an Eastern mystical teachings that said that, the desire for that which is unobtainable and the desire to avoid that which is unavoidable is a source of human suffering. So anytime you're searching for a fantasy and unwilling to embrace the nightmare that it breeds, you'll be searching for that which is unobtainable and avoid that which is unavoidable. So I learned a long time ago that I am both-sided and so are others. So if I have an unrealistic expectation for them to be one-sided, I'm going to be betrayed. Now, they're not betraying me. I'm betraying myself by projecting my unrealistic expectation on another person to be one-sided. Now, if I don't have that expectation, and I have an expectation that they're a human being with a set of values, when I communicate in their values, they'll probably be nice. When I go against their values, they're probably going to be mean. If I expect them to be human and not fantasize that they're going to be one-sided, I don't get betrayed and I don't get depressed because my expectation's going to match reality. But the second I try to create an expectation that doesn't match reality, I'm going to get the feedback from my psychology and physiology to let me know I've got an unrealistic expectation. And depression is not an enemy. Depression is a friend. It's letting you know that you have an unrealistic expectation on something or someone. And it's helping you and guiding you to break down your thoughts and to get grounded about what's really important to you and what's realistic. Because we're sometimes taught what ought to be and not what is. And whenever we do, we create artificial idealisms that we project onto ourselves and other people sometimes. So the first one is an unrealistic expectation on others to live one-sided. The second one is an unrealistic expectation on others to live outside their values and inside your values. Now, anybody who's been married for any duration at all will realize that when you first get married, you tend to have a tendency to push and project your values onto the other one and try to help refine the other person. Raise your hand if you've ever found yourself doing that before. And what happens is you find out eventually that that is futile. If you try to get your wife to be just like you, well, any two people that are exactly the same one's not necessary. So you'll destroy the relationship expecting her to be you. That would be like two cooks in the kitchen. You need somebody that's kind of like a complementary opposite to you, somebody you can delegate things that are not important to you that they love doing, and they can delegate things that they don't love doing that you love doing. So you work as a team, sort of an androgyny of these pairs of opposites, complementary opposites, sometimes called. But if you expect them to live in your values, they're not going to. They can't sustain it. Maybe in the beginning, when they're infatuated in the first few weeks, when they first meet you and they got goo-goo eyes and they got rose-tinted glasses, they think they can live in your values. But eventually they start getting resentful that they can't live on their own. And they eventually stand up to you and put you in your place and test out what you're capable of doing. And then you find out that other person that I thought was supporting me also challenges me. Pardon me if there's a noise in the background. There's somebody with a loud car driving by on outside here. So anyway, so the second one is that. The third one is a combination of the two. You now expect them to be more nice than mean, more kind than cruel, more positive, negative, more peaceful than wrathful, and you expect them to live in your values. Now, this is a sign of immaturity, and it's unrealistic, and it's not going to happen, and you're going to end up having anger and aggression, blame and feelings of betrayal, criticism and challenge, despair and depression, a desire to exit and escape, feelings of frustration and futility, grouchiness and grief, hatred and hurt, irrationality and irritation, and you feel jaded and you will end up like a jerk. The A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J's, I made them up as I said them, of negativity will automatically emerge spontaneously when you expect somebody to live in something they're not going to be. So then depression is a combination and a response to let you know that you have an unrealistic expectation, which is another name for a fantasy about how people are supposed to be, how they should be, according to your values. But they can't live in your values. They live in their values. And if you can't respect another individual to honor what they are, know what they are, honor what they are, and communicate in what they are, you're probably going to end up with a lot of frustrations, the ABCDs of negativity, which are the underlying components of depression. Now, the next one, that's when you're angry at them. The next one, number 4, is an unrealistic expectation on yourself to live one-sided. Now you have a fantasy. I'm going to be only positive, never negative. I'm going to be only nice, never mean. I'm going to be only kind, never cruel. And what's going to happen is you're going to set up a false expectation on yourself, and you're going to end up beating yourself up. And many autoimmune conditions are a byproduct of this. We have an autoimmune response of self-depreciation, attacking our own tissues and body. And our body is creating symptoms to guide us, to let us know that we're beating ourselves up because we're expecting something unrealistic in our life. The next one is an unrealistic expectation on ourselves to live outside our values and in somebody else's values. Now, when you first meet the person that you're enamored with and infatuated with, you think you can live in their values. And you're afraid of losing them, so you try to. But you start building up resentment because you feel like you're having to sacrifice for them. And the sacrifice is not really the thing that will lead to sustaining relationships. You think it will, but it's not. It's the ability to communicate what you want in terms of what other people want. It's linking values, not subordinating or superordinating value systems. So you have an expectation that you're going to live in somebody else's values. Well, I tried to do that. I met this beautiful brown-haired girl when I was 20 years old. She walked into my microbiology class. And I was, whoa, this is a gorgeous girl. I was having a hard time not looking at her. And it was interesting. My day consisted of physics, mathematics, chemistry, microbiology, the sciences. I was studying pre-med. And here comes this beautiful girl, catches my eye. Now, I know that nobody here has probably ever been faced with this phenomenon, but I got sidetracked. Anybody here knows anybody that's been sidetracked by somebody that's attractive? You got a few? Helen, you've had a few of those, haven't you? So anyway, I ended up being sidetracked. She came down the aisle, sat directly in front of me. I could smell her perfume. I was a goner. All I wanted to do is, I couldn't think of microbiology. All I could do is I wanted to talk to this girl. So I started flirting with her, and I talked with her and walked out with her, and we became boyfriend and girlfriend. I was blessed. But she was a Kilgore Rangerette, halftime entertainment football trainer for girls that do halftime entertainment in football. And so she was doing pom-pom dancing. And now that's so foreign to me. I went out and I went to the football field and did pom-pom dancing with a bunch of girls loaded with estrogen. And I forgot my studies. And for the first 2 to 3 weeks, I almost let my studies go to zero. And I was infatuated with her. I tried to live in her values, but I was in the back of my mind intuitively going, this isn't healthy. I'm going to fail my classes. The whole purpose of going to school is being undermined. I was injecting the values of somebody I put on a pedestal to teach me not to put people on pedestals, but to put them in my heart. And I was building up resentment because I wanted to be loved for who I was, but I wasn't being willing to be who I was. So slowly but surely, I built up some resentment to balance out the infatuation. And I told her I needed to study for a test. And I got more courage to be able to be myself. And finally, I was able to be myself with her. And our relationship was more stable. But at first, I thought I was going to live in her values. But I was 20 years old and very naive, and I realized it's not going to last. It's transient. You won't have a sustainable relationship trying to think you're going to get them to live in your values, or you try to get to live in their values. You have to learn how to communicate what you value in terms of the other person's values, so you can appreciate how what they're dedicated to is helping you fulfill what you're dedicated to. So you don't have to fix them. You don't have to change them. You don't have to change you. You just appreciate the contribution they're making to your life. If not, you're going to be depressed because you're having an unrealistic expectation on yourself. The next one is a combination of those two. An expectation to be one-sided, an expectation now for you to live outside your values and somebody else's values. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, envy is ignorance, imitation is suicide. If you try to be somebody you're not, you're going to end up beating yourself up, wondering why you can't sustain it. The next one, number 7, is a combination of the first 3 and the second 3. Now you have an unrealistic expectation on other people and yourself. Your depression is getting bigger. It's growing because life's not matching your fantasy. You have these unrealistic expectations. Now, anytime you exceed your expectation, you have joy. Anytime you don't exceed expectation, you have sorrow. So you're now having sorrow and depression because life's not matching the fantasies that you're running your life by. And there's so many fantasies. Paul Dirac, the Nobel Prize winner, said it beautifully in his book on the principles of quantum mechanics in 1947. It's not that we don't know so much, we know so much that isn't so. We get distracted by false information instead of the truth. This is why it's so important to understand what truth is and what love is, and understand where that source comes from. And you all know this. Your life's dedicated to that. So the next one is an unrealistic expectation on a collective, community, or society to be one-sided and to all be the same. Ooh. I remember speaking at UNESCO in France to the United Nations Delegate Training Program. And I noticed that everybody there had their own unique values. And everybody, when I asked them, what do you think is the key to peace? They all projected their ideals and values onto everybody else. And then there was a fight in the room about how they decided to do it. So there was conflict because everybody had a different set of values. But they thought that their values were right and everybody else wrong needed to grow up and be like them. And this created a delusion. So anytime you expect society collectively to be one-sided and to fit some one-sided value system, nice without mean, kind without cruel, there's a global peace index that measures 99.7% of the world's population. It monitors it for 13 parameters by the brightest people in the field. And it shows that the combination of support and challenge, agreements and disagreements are part of life. And that they're not only in the individual, within yourself. How many agree you have moments of calm and moments of turmoil? Moments of calm, moments of turmoil. When you're with your spouse, moments of calm, moments of turmoil. Moments when you agree, sometimes you have hugs, sometimes you have slugs, or at least verbal slugs. And sometimes when you get your kids together, you want to hug them, and sometimes you want to trap them and slug those little kiddos. You get your buttons pushed sometimes. This is part of our nature. We must have a parasympathetic and a sympathetic part of our brain and body functioning. Because when we get overly protected and supported, we stay juvenilely dependent, we don't grow. If we get overly challenged, we get precociously independent, we grow too fast. But if we get a perfect balance of support and challenge, we grow maximally. That's why whenever you got an overprotective person in the family, somebody else plays aggressive, the bullies show up to make sure they get a balance of these pairs of opposites. Heraclitus, the Greek philosopher, called it the unity of opposites. So the next one is the unrealistic expectation on the collective group or the community to now live in your values. Now, this is the challenge that the rabbis have. The rabbis have wisdom, they study, they dedicate their lives. And they do what they can to help the community, and they set the rules, but sometimes it's not easy to get everybody to abide by the set of rules that they really believe would be helpful to them. Everybody would agree. Trying to get everybody to agree on the same rules is not easy. In fact, if you want to make God laugh, just tell him those rules that you got that planned for everybody. You'll get a good comedy out of that. But in the process of doing it, you try to communicate what you believe will help people in a respectful manner, in a way that they can get their values met, and they're receptive and open up, and they are more likely to abide in a community fashion than if you project autocratically and authoritatively. They tend to resist because their sympathetic nervous system comes online and they go into fight or flight response. So if you expect everybody to live in your values, you're going to have frustration. It's been shown that cultures must have support and challenge agreements and disagreements and everything else to make adaptation. Otherwise, we stagnate. So we must have this. And imagine if, I'm going to ask the women here, imagine if your man came to you, your husband came to you and said to you, I just want to be everything you want me to be. I just want you to do me. I want to do everything you want me to do. Tell me when to jump. Tell me when to do it. Tell me when to do it. I just want to be everything you want me to be. You'd go, boring, stand up to me, be a man, get some testosterone, give me a little bit of resistance. You wouldn't want them to just do everything you want. You wouldn't, if any two people is the same, you wouldn't need them because you go and they're already doing what I'm doing. You need to have a nice blend of agreement, disagreement. There's no respect otherwise. They found out that both praise plus reprimand builds respect. If somebody, when you are with a marriage and they can't say anything but yes, you don't respect them. They can't say anything but no, you don't respect them. If they can say yes and no in a perfect balance and banter with you and hold you accountable, you've now got a mate. And that's why you want people to be able to be both-sided and appreciate the nature of their value system and why they must have it, because there's going to be support and challenge. You can't go through life without both support and challenge. The next one is a combination of those two. You now have a collective expectation of them to be one-sided and live in your values, which is not going to happen. And again, more depression. Now you've got an expectation on people, yourself, and on your community to be something they can't be. And more ABCDs, E, F, G, H, I, J's of negativity are going to keep surfacing. And the last one, which is the most hilarious one, is an unrealistic expectation on mechanical objects like a computer, things like AI that's coming around, machines, cars, electric systems in your house. Anytime you expect a machine to be one-sided or to live in your values, you're going to be angry. It's not going to. It's going to only live according to how it was designed. And if you don't know how it's designed, you're going to put a false expectation on a machine and you're going to be angry at machines. I don't know about you. When I first got my computer many years ago, back in the late 80s or mid 80s, I wanted to throw my computer on the floor, and I cussed at my computer and said it was stupid. Stupid machine. Anybody ever done that before and thought some machine was stupid? You're the one stupid when you say it, but you don't want to say that. You just let the computer be stupid. But the reality is the computer is designed to do a certain thing. And if you expect it to do something other than what it's designed to do, you're going to be pretty angry. And that's going to be depressing. So if you add now the expectation on a computer to live one-sided or to live in your values and the combination, you now got 14 different reasons why. And if you add the last one, which is all the above, and put them all together, welcome to depression. I've worked with thousands of people with depression, and the depression is a result of an unrealistic expectation that can't be met. It's either in time frame. Anytime you set a goal that's not aligned with your highest values, you're going to end up depressed. Anytime you set a goal that's expected to be one-sided and you have a fantasy, not a real objective, you're going to be depressed. Anytime you expect other people to do that, you're going to be depressed. Depression is not your enemy. Depression is your friend. It's letting you know to be mature enough to set grounded, real objectives and expectations that people and yourself can live by and the world can live by. When you do, the world is amazing, and actually you get fulfillment in life because your expectations are matching reality. When human will matches divine will, you don't have depression. When your will matches divine will, you're graced, you're inspired, you feel love, you're thankful, you feel certain, you know, you feel present. And I believe that the divine gives us a feedback and guides us wisely to that, which is our authentic self. But when we try to live and get other people or others or ourselves to live outside what's true, then human will deserves to get smacked around a bit, and we get the symptoms that it's designed to do. Our divine nature is not being lived out. Our human nature may be, our animal nature may be, the affections that Aristotle described, but not the real divine nature. which I think is ultimately to love somebody, and to love somebody is to embrace both sides of them and not expect one side out of them, because they're going to be both. Anybody that's going to have tries to be one-sided, the most depressed people I know are the people trying to get rid of half of their life. You don't need to get rid of half of yourself to be loved. You need to just learn to open up to all parts of yourself. That light and shadow that Jung talked about is really one person's shadow is another person's light. That's the
Dr.
funny
John,
part.
Dr. John, let's go. There's so many questions people want to ask you. Can we jump in? Because I know the time is limited. Is that okay?
I will do anything that will help the group here.
Okay, let's do it. Let's first ask the 3 poll questions and then we'll jump into it. Okay, 3 questions we're asking everybody tonight. What do you feel most aligned with right now in your life? Number 1, my personal values and priorities. Number 2, my career or external obligations. Number 3, relationships with families and friends. Number 4, I'm not sure. I'm a bit disconnected. Second question. When facing challenges, how do you typically perceive them? When you have a challenge, A, is overwhelming a negative experience. B, as opportunities for growth and learning. C, a mix of both depending on the situation. Or D, I try to avoid thinking about challenges. Third question, how do you internally reflect on balance of positive and negatives in your life? How often do you intentionally reflect on the balance of good and positive or negative in your life? A, daily or regularly, constantly. B, occasionally. C, rarely. Or D, I don't think about this at all. Answer those 3 questions, we'll get a little feeling, and then we're going to go to the live questions. Dr. John, I'd like to get the people involved.
Great, fantastic. Yeah, who wants to listen to me all day?
Right. That's when we're balancing it, you know what I mean? The good and the bad.
Perfect.
Okay, 5 more seconds. And let's share the results with everybody. Here we go. Okay, what do you feel most aligned with right now in your life? So most people here, by more than double, 45% of the people, my personal values and priorities. Most people here tonight feel that their values and the priorities are set in place. Only 4% of people feel their career or external obligations are aligned good now. So I guess, it is a tough economy. Could be that's also part of it. C, relationships with families and friends, 29%, and 22%, I'm not sure, I feel a bit disconnected. Dr. John, do you want to mention anything on this? We can go to the next one.
Well, each individual, as I said, has a unique fingerprint specific, retinal pattern specific, voice print specific, snowflake specific set of values. And if they look really honestly at themselves and look at what their life demonstrates, the challenge with asking questions is sometimes people will answer what they think that ought to be instead of what their life demonstrates. So when you do, you want to be honest with your life's demonstrations, not your ideals and fantasies about how you should be, but how are you? If you start with an integrity about who you are, you go farther than if you start with a fantasy of who you are from the beginning. So get really truthful about what is priority. Now, I would expect the values and priorities would be probably at the top because that's the truth. But some people have a higher value on relationships than others. Some people have a higher value on business than others. And some people probably are confused. So I would expect those to be pretty well what they've got. I would have expected a little higher on career, but inside the community, the Jewish community has a high value on relationships community. So as a result of that, this is unique to this community, most likely. If I was to do the same questionnaire to a general audience that's not part of the community, I would probably find career and relationships a little bit more balanced. But you have a very high value on community. And as far as you're concerned, everybody's part of your family.
Sure. Okay, the next question. When facing challenges, how do we typically perceive them? This is a very telling poll. As overwhelming and negative experience, 9%, 24% of people as opportunities for growth and learning, 63% of people, the number one answer, a mix of both depending on the situation. So sometimes when people go through challenges, they're able to perceive them, okay, and sometimes not, obviously depending on the situation. Only 4% of people try to avoid it. So I guess, depending on the situation. Okay, should we go to the last poll? Then we go to the live questions?
Can I respond to that first?
Sure.
Yeah. I've been blessed for many years, 39 years, to clinically utilize some methodologies to help people become conscious of what they're unconscious of by asking quality questions. So the purpose of the quality of our life is based on the quality of the questions we ask. If we ask amazing questions, we have an amazing life. And questions make us conscious of what's unconscious. And if we ask questions and we first see an event that we think is terrible, and we jump to an impulsive conclusion that that's a terrible event, and we instinctively want to avoid it and label it, project our judgments on it, we didn't reflect much. We reacted before we proacted, and we didn't stop and ask a question. What is the benefits, upsides, and opportunities that this challenge brings? Now, I've had the opportunity to work with people from all different types of challenges. At least that's what they started with the thought of. But sometimes a challenge comes our way, and a day, a week, a month, a year, 5 years later, we look back and go, oh, thank God that occurred. But why have the wisdom of the ages with the aging process? Why not have the wisdom of the ages without the aging process? By not doubting the order of the universe that God is demonstrating, but to look beyond our human frailties and misunderstandings and look for where is the blessings in this experience. If we do and hold ourselves accountable, we can transform our stressings into blessings and transform our challenges and opportunities and not have to age to get the wisdom. We can have the wisdom on the spot by asking quality questions. Because I'd like to share a story. Can I share a story on this? So I had a gentleman that came to my breakthrough experience months ago. And he had been 3 years feeling guilty and depressed. And he was very distraught. And what had happened and why he was judging himself is because his mother passed away. And they asked if he'd like to come, and he stalled one day because he had a business meeting and he didn't want to miss that business meeting. So he stalled and he didn't make it to see his mom before she died. And he felt by the social ought, he should have done that. So he's caught between what he did is and ought, as David Hume describes. So I asked him, okay, you've been now depressed and feeling guilty for 3 years over this happening. Go to the moment when you found out and got the call and you made the decision to stay and finish your work because you really believed at that moment that your mom is going to still live another day or two. So you thought you had the time. So you made the decision based on an assumption that she's not going to die that night. And so you got yourself at least another day and you were going to come the next day. I said, okay, go that moment. Now, in that moment, what was the benefit of you not showing up? And he says, there is no benefit. I said, no, there is. What's the benefit of you not showing up? I can't see it. I don't know. No, look again. Because his response was in less than a second, which means he didn't reflect. He was just saying, I don't know. He wasn't really looking. I said, look again. What's the benefit that you didn't make it to see your mom before she died? How could there be benefit in that? I didn't ask that. What's the benefit? No matter what I did, he was just stalling and not answering the question. So I reversed the question. If you had made it to your mom before she died, what would have been the drawback? And he stopped and he stared. And then all of a sudden, he got tears in his eyes. He said, my mom died in my sister's arms. My mom and my sister had not talked for 11 years. If I had shown up, that would not have happened. And I know my mom loved me and I loved her, but my mom wanted to resolve the issue with her daughter before she died. And the daughter did not want her to die without it because no matter how much they judge each other, because of trivial insights, deep inside, they still loved each other. And if I would have shown up, the daughter would not have come there. The mother would not have resolved this. The daughter, she would have died incomplete with her daughter. He cried. He saw that there was a hidden order in divine plan after all. But he did the oughts, not the is. And he got trapped with an unrealistic expectation on himself. And he tried to live outside his values into what other people expected. And in that moment, he cried and he realized, right now, I'm very grateful for the way it happened, because I know how much it meant to have my mother to be able to hold her in her arms and my sister to be able to do that before they died. That would have been the most significant thing that I could have contributed to my mother. And by me not being there, that was able to happen. And all of a sudden he saw in his mind, he said, that was God's will. What I thought it was, and what I thought it should be, wasn't what it was. She really got it. So sometimes we think there's challenges and we don't take the time to ask, where's the upside? We also think sometimes there's positive things. And what we're doing is we're taking our human value systems and we're making decisions on that instead of the balance of nature, which is the divine order. And when we do, we then end up judging things positively or negatively. And then we have intrusive thoughts and they occupy our mind and we don't have clear consciousness. And then we justify with our pride instead of actually realize that there's a higher order and humble ourselves before divinity so we can have more certainty for humanity.
Wow, powerful. Okay, last question. How often do you intentionally reflect on the balance of positive and negative in your life? 56% of people say daily. They basically every day keep on thinking positive, negative. It seems like that's like the number one answer. 33% occasionally, 5% rarely, 6% I really don't think about this. So it seems like intentionally looking at positive and negative, it's very on people's minds. Okay, let's go to the first live question. Hi.
Hello?
Yes, hi, how are you?
Yeah, hi. Okay, so my question is as follows. I'd like to know if the Demartini method works to clear up like negativity or negative feelings around, let's say, a certain situation, or does it only work with resentments around people? For instance, like let's say a person's been in a situation for a very long time. For example, let's say finding their life partner. So if a person is in a situation like that for many, many years, then the whole process becomes there's a lot of negativity which ends up building up around that. Now, I'd like to know if the columns that are in the Demartini method can be worked around, let's say, a life situation, for example, like that.
Based on what you just said, that you described, there's absolutely no reason why the Demartini method can't dissolve that. See,
Dr. John, can we give like a short what the Demartini method is? Because she obviously knows, most people don't know what that is.
Yeah. Well, the Demartini method, I've been working on for 52 years. And I really believe that there was well, let me go back. The German philosopher, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, who is very philosophical and theologically oriented, said that there was a perfection in the universe and in the world that few people ever get to know. But those that do, their lives are changed forever. And that no human being could improve upon the perfection that already is, the divine perfection, he called it. But we sometimes have our ideas of what we think it should be, instead of actually get to know what it is. And so I was interested in what is this perfection? What is this hidden order in the apparent chaos that we live our lives through? And I realized that in the study of thermodynamics, that whenever you have missing information and you're unconscious of information, you have disorder. It's entropic. And whenever you have the information regleaned by asking quality questions, you can discover the hidden order. So there's nothing your mortal body can experience that your mortal soul can't love. There's nothing that goes on in a dynamic that can't be transcended. But most people kind of like to live in their mundane judgments and try to fix the person, and then the other person doesn't respond, and then they end up having labels. labels usually because of a byproduct of not knowing how to communicate within each other's values. Now, if you itemize, the Demartini method is a series of questions, very concise questions that help you see the hidden order in the apparent chaos. So you can see that what's going on in your life is on the way, not in the way. So you can be grateful and honor the perfection that's there that you're not seeing yet. And you have to be accountable. So if you're not holding yourself accountable when you're doing it, it's usually wise to have a facilitator hold you accountable to make sure you answer the questions with accountability. But I don't know of anything that a person's experienced that hasn't been able to be transformed and appreciated with the method. I've seen almost every imaginable thing that people could face. Now, if a person has done a particular behavior for many years and you're expecting them to not do a behavior and you keep being angry at them for doing the behavior, there's a number of things you can do. You can identify, first of all, what specific trait, action, or inaction do you perceive this individual displaying or demonstrating that you dislike or despise or want to avoid most, and get concise. Because broad, vague generalities about what they do that you're angry about, it's not going to get you very far. But getting precisely what they're doing that you're judging. Now, once you identify what this is, and it's not hearsay, and it's not vague generalities, and it's not how you felt, but it's what they did, then you ask this question. And this is the one that is really the sign of maturity. There's a statement, and it's in the New Testament. Pardon for talking about the New Testament for a second, but it's a statement that says, beware of judging others, for what you judge in others, you do the same things. Because we point our fingers at others, but we do the same thing, but it may be in our own way, but we still do the same thing. Now, I found that to be true after 39 years of clinical cases with probably a couple 100,000 people. Now, I go in, I then ask this, all right, myself, instead of projecting my finger and judging and blaming them, I look and get accountable. Epictetus, the Greek philosopher, said, first we blame others when we're starting our journey of personal development. Then we blame ourselves. And then when we finally get mature, we find out there's nothing to blame. We finally know how to ask the questions to see why things are happening in our life and the purpose behind it. So we go in there and we ask, all right, go to a moment where and when you perceive yourself displaying or demonstrating the same specific trait, action, or inaction that you're disliking in this person. And you find out that, oh, I actually have the same behaviors in my own way. I may not be doing it in exactly the same people, but I'm doing it the same way. I was judging somebody for being critical one time, and then I stopped and looked, okay, where am I critical? I ran out of paper. I had so many criticals of people, and I started listing them all. And I humbled myself and realized there in my life, you only resent things on the outside that represent parts of you on the inside you haven't loved. You only resent people on the outside when they are reminding you of what you're feeling ashamed of and dissociating from and going into pride to protect yourself from facing that, and then pointing your finger at them for revealing to you what you have not loved in yourself that you're doing. We judge our reflections. So I look until I own the trait, and I have reflective awareness. Reflective awareness is the highest level of awareness. Deflective awareness leaves you with your amygdala and keeps you in your animal nature and makes you think you're right and set up all the unrealistic expectations. So I look at, where do I do what I see in them? I went through the Oxford Dictionary. I went through 4,628 traits, and I looked at where I had every single one of them in my life, and I was able to identify them to the degree of the most extreme people that I identified doing the trait. I realized that the only traits that I react to in people are the ones I'm disowning in myself. If I'm too proud or too humble to admit what I see in others inside me, I react. If I'm humble enough to see the trait within myself and reflect truthfully and realize that they've come into my life to point out what I'm judging in myself and helping me to learn to love me, now you open up a doorway of communication. Now, if you go to the next question, once you've owned it and identified it, Now go to the moment when they do the trait. And how is it helping me? Is it making me more resilient? Is it making more determined? Is it making more independent? Is it making me get creative? Is it making me close to my community? Is it making me closer to my kids? Is it making me think and research and study how this thing works? Does it make me go and study the Old Testament, Torah more effectively? How is it helping me? When I can stop and reflect and find out how it's helping me equally to what I thought it was harming me, it's not running me, I'm running me. Anything you resent on the outside occupies space and time in your mind and will preoccupy with intrusive thoughts and make you have insomnia trying to sleep at night. Anything you infatuate with somebody will occupy space and time in your mind and make it hard to sleep at night. But if you actually go and balance the equation, have reflective awareness, be accountable, be mature enough to own what you judge, look at yourself as much as you look at them, I assure you, the moment you do, you thank the person that's pushing your buttons and the dynamic changes. Because when you love people for who they are, they turn into who you love.
Wow. Oh, okay. Let's go to the next live question. Hold on 1 second. Hi.
Hi, I think most of my question got answered. My question was, how do I change my values? Because I want to spontaneously do the things I value, and sometimes it's not, I have unrealistic expectations and of myself. Maybe because it's not, I want to do things that are not my identity or not what I value, but I really value it deep down. It's not who I am. Like, I want to change. I want to be someone else. Was that clear?
I think so. If not, then let's ask after I respond and see. So I'm going to use a story to try to help start this answer. I know I'm long-winded sometimes, but I found that's I had a lady the other day in Brisbane, Australia, go on GPT chat and ask, who is Dr. Demartini and how old is he? And GPT chat made a list of things that describe me. And most of them were pretty, I think, accurate. But one of the things that it said that I thought I chuckled over, it said he's the king of bad jokes. So if I say anything that's got you laughing in a way that's a sick joke, just know that that's just because I'm a king of bad jokes, according to GPT chat. Now, what happened is in 2012, I was speaking to about 5,000 people in the convention center in Johannesburg. I was the opening speaker. Richard Branson was the last speaker. And there's a group of speakers in between. And it was on a prosperous life, how to live a high achieving, prosperous life. And I got up on stage and I asked the whole group, how many of you would like to be financially independent, where your passive income is exceeding your active income, and you're working because you love to, not because you have to, and you want to be philanthropic and be able to contribute to the world in a more expanded financial way? And every hand went up. Some people put two hands, some people put their leg in the air. I didn't know if they thought they were storks or something, but they put their leg in the air. And all of a sudden, I looked and the whole room, a sea of hands across the room. Then I asked a question. Everybody in that room believed that they wanted to be financially independent. Then I asked, how many of you now are financially independent, where your passive income exceeds your active income? All the hands went down except 7 hands out of 5,000 something people. 7 hands in the VIP section up in the front. So there's a lot of people that wanted to be, but nobody was achieving it. So I said, isn't that interesting? You all believed that you want to be financially independent, but you're not. Why are 7 people with their hand up and 99% of them no? Let me tell you why. I'm going to show it to you. I said, the hierarchy of your values dictates your financial destiny. If you don't have a value on wealth building, it's not going to happen. If you have a value on your children, your money's going to go to your children. If you have a high value on your business, your money's going to go to your business. If you have a high value on your health, your money's going to go to your health. Your money is going to be spent according to what you value most. If you don't have a value on buying assets and buying appreciable assets to go up in value, you're not going to have money work for you. You're going to be working as a slave for money all your life. So I said, so let's ask and find out. So I said, I'm going to give you 10 million US dollars. So I have these pallets brought out with $10 million for 5,000 people, right? Now, this was not real money. Otherwise, I'd have a problem. But we brought these pallets out. I said, you now have $10 million. I want you on a piece of paper to write down the 10 things you're going to do with that $10 million. And I need you to write them, these 10 things, in 60 seconds. So I want you to write, I'm going to give you 60 seconds. On your mark, get set, go, write the 10 things you're going to do with $10 million. And they quickly wrote it down as fast as they could. And there's energy in the room, and there's people laughing, and they're giggling about what they're going to do and everything else. And I said, all right, stop. 60 seconds. Turn your paper to the person next to you. I said, now, how many of you, I want you to calculate how much of the $10 million is still left as an asset that's now going to work for you, and how much of that got transformed into a consumable item that's going to go down in value. And they estimated, to the best of their ability, 20 to 80% of $10 million was spent in 1 minute on things that went down in value, which means that they're not going to be financially independent because they don't really have a value on it. They have a value on lifestyle. They have value on immediate gratification. They don't have a deferred gratification. They have an immediate gratification, which is an amygdala response, not an executive strategic idea of building wealth. So the reason why they didn't have their hands up when I asked them how many are financially independent is because they don't have the values that will ever lead there. So now the question is, I said, now can you see it? I humbled them. I said, can you now see? And by the way, there was about 12 people that did not spend it on depreciables, but put it into assets. And those 12 people, 7 of the ones that had their hand up, they were already financially independent. So people could see that the hike of their values was impacting what they were doing. So the first thing to do is identify what your current values are. And don't lie, and don't write down what you wish it would be or what you think it ought to be, but what is your life demonstrating? And be integral. Because your life is, integrity is important. So what exactly is the truth of what your life is demonstrating? My life demonstrates that I research and teach every day. You know, my workout is once a week. I do certain things. I'm with my daughter here. I spend time with my kids, but not quite as much as they sometimes like. So if I look honestly, teaching is up at the top. I can make up stories. I can say what everybody wants to hear, but my life demonstrates this. So if you're not honest about what your life demonstrates, you're starting with a false starting point. And that's like getting an Uber and saying, I don't know where I am. I don't know where I'm going. Take me there. You need to be honest with yourself. Once you're honest with yourself, you look, where is the thing you say you want to do on your list of values? So if you say you want to go and spend more time with your family, but it's not on the highest list of values, it's number 7, then you're going to procrastinate, hesitate, and frustrate unless you change the value. But so first, identify what are the values. Find out what you say you want to make important. Where is it? So you can be integral with that. Now, if you find that what you say you want to make important is lower than you thought, and now you're facing the truth of that, you can raise it. And here's how you raise a value. In operant conditioning by Skinner or Pavlov, they found out that every decision we make with our amygdala is based on whatever gives us more advantage and disadvantage. So every decision you make, every moment of every day is always based on what you have with the data you have in your mind at that moment and the past experience you have that you've accumulated this data through. You're making a decision based on what you think will give you the greatest advantage or disadvantage at that moment, factoring everybody whose factors and all the consequences of those factors. Once you find out what that decision is, you make a decision. Now, you may govern that with your executive function, but your amygdala impulsively does that automatically. I've been studying the brain for 46 years and researching and writing about that, and I'm certain about how that brain works. Now, if you decide I want to raise something up on my values, then identify the proven actions that have been proven, that have a track record, that real evidence repeatedly, that if I do these actions, I will get that result. This is called a clear strategy. And you look at the actions that will give you a result, and you stack up the benefits and advantages of doing those actions. And if you stack up enough benefits, and the benefits and the advantages of doing it exceed the current advantages and benefits of what you're doing, you will shift your behavior and start doing the thing you say you want to do. But you have to stack up enough advantages over and above the advantages you have for doing what you're doing, or you'll keep doing what you're doing. Expecting to do something just intellectually won't work. But stacking enough advantages, because the assignment of the way the brain works, the amygdala assigns valency to experiences. And so if you stack up more advantages, it has more of an impulse to take action towards it. But if you don't see enough advantages, you won't do it. There's an old saying, when the why is big enough, the house take care of themselves. But you got to have a big enough reason for doing it. So if you don't have enough reason for doing it, you won't. So you stack up more benefits and more advantages to you and whoever is important in your values. And if you see the benefits outweighing the drawbacks and outweighing what you're currently doing's benefits, you will spontaneously start doing those actions. I've been doing this 46 years. I could take any value system and raise it or lower it. It's not that difficult. But you got to hold the person accountable to answer the questions, because they're going to say, well, I don't know. And they're not going to get an answer. And you're going to have to hold them accountable to go and answer and look again. When they look again and they open up new neural pathways and neuroplastically remodel their brain acts differently. There's a law in neurology called Hebb's rule. Anytime two neurons fire together, they wire together. So if you fire off the brain with new associations, brain pathways neuroplastically remodeled, and now you spontaneously do new actions, and you just change the trajectory of your life. So you can change any value system and raise it and lower it, but just know, as Aristotle said, and Hippocrates said, are you willing to give up what you're attached to have what you say you want? That's an interesting question, because sometimes you want the cake and the ice cream too, and if you raise something higher in your values, something else goes lower, and you may now not put as much attention on that. When I was a surfer back in my teenage years, I surfed all day, 11 hours a day. I nearly died at 17. All of a sudden, I got a wake-up call that I wanted to learn. And I was a high school dropout at the time, but I wanted to learn. And now all of a sudden I had a massive interest in wanting to learn and go back to school and learn how to read and learn how to speak properly. I wasn't able to do that as a child. I had a speech impediment, learning problem. But when I had all of a sudden a motive for doing it, I figured out how to overcome that so-called obstacle, and I shifted my values, and I methodically, patiently, meticulously, perseverantly was able to do it. So if you have a big enough reason for doing it, you'll do it. But until you do, you won't. So you stack up the advantages and benefits of the new behavior and the actions proven to achieve it. And if you do, you will increase the probabilities of that outcome instead of the original actions you spontaneously used to do.
Beautiful. Dr. John, to summarize what you just said, is basically if you put the priorities and you refocus your brain, and that's something that you got to do, you'll do it. But we don't really want to do it. We want to just say we want to do it, but then we hold ourselves back because we're comfortable with not doing it or whatever we're not doing.
Well, we're acting according to our values, but we sometimes don't know what they really are. I mean, I had a lady that came to a program, the Breakthrough Experience, and she said, my highest value is my children. And my BS meter, you know how you have a BS meter that goes, kind of zips over to this side, you know, it's like a Geiger counter, went off. And my BS meter went off, and I said, what I know about you is you're spending on average a minimum of 10 and sometimes 12 hours a day at your career. When you're home, you've got nannies during the day and you got people and maids taking care of things. You got house cleaners there and you're at your office. And then when you're home, you're working on your business. You're a businesswoman. You're going to try to tell me your children are the highest priorities in your life? Hard for me to believe that. And she stopped and she looked at me and she goes, I said, when I look at the value determination, I look at how you fill your space is filled with business things. It's not filled with your kids. Your time, it's not filled with your kids. Your energy, it's not energized by your kids. Your money is going into your business. Where you're disciplined, where you're reliable, where you're focused is your business. What you're organized is your business. What you think about, visualize, affirm is your business. Are you trying to lie to yourself about what's important to you? Your life doesn't demonstrate that. And she started to cry. And she says, this has been the biggest struggle in my life. My mom was extremely dedicated to children. She did not work. She depended on dad. Dad was aggressive. I swore I don't ever want to be like that. I don't want to be trapped. And I made sure I was business savvy. But at the same time, I respect my mom because she raised us. And I guess I don't want to admit what I'm really focused on. I want to believe what I ought to do. I ought to be more there with my kids. I hear myself saying, I really need to be with my kids. I should be with my kids. I ought to be with my kids. Anytime you hear yourself saying, I should, I ought to, supposed to, I got to, I have to, I must, I need to, that's an injected value from some outer authority. It's not you. And she realized that. And then I said, now, what's the benefit to your children of doing what you're doing? And I made her stop and look at how it was helping her kids and giving her kids opportunities they would never have. And then I also said, now, what would be the benefit of prioritizing your business and delegating more and giving you more time for your children? And she got tears in her eyes. And we restructured how she was delegating things and doing only the highest priority things. And she was able to get another 8 hours a week back with her kids without interfering with her business. As long as her business was thriving, she was fine. She could go home and be with her kids. But if she didn't feel she was succeeding there, or she was dependent on somebody, she was feeling conflict. So we figured out how she could have more time with the kids, keep her business there, and also what was the benefit to the kids of her being dedicated, because there was a greater education. They were able to travel. They were able to learn new different languages. And when she got through, she was not having an internal conflict, and she was able to be honest about what her priorities were.
Dr. John, let's try to grab a few more questions in. I know it's running late, but some people want to ask you. Here. Hi.
Hello. Number one, thank you so much. This is amazing. Question. I understand that you're saying that if someone's values hurt me or work against me, then I have to identify something in myself. But what if the person who's hurting me has a personality disorder or is not a healthy person? Does that also apply?
Well, I'm going to have some fun with this one. So I had this man that drank a bit of alcohol. I don't drink alcohol. I haven't drank alcohol. I've had one glass of wine in 52 years. I'm not much of a man, I guess. You got to have at least a glass of wine at least every 25 years, right? But I don't drink alcohol, and I don't do things. But this woman had a husband that drank some alcohol. Now, when he drank alcohol, he went out with his buddies, and they'd have a beer at a bar. Now, this is not my thing. I don't go to bars and stuff like that, but this was his thing. And he'd have a beer or two with his buddies and then come home. And then she would be upset with him because she wanted him home earlier. Of course, the more she was upset with him, the more he wanted to go to the bar. Catch 22. He wanted her to get to bed so he could get home in peace. And she wanted him to be at home because she wanted to control him to some degree. And a man eventually learns that it's destiny, that he's going to hire a woman or, marry a woman that's going to tell him what to do. I mean, that's the way it is. Because women are more like cats and men are like dogs. And a cat, you can't tell them what to do, but a dog you can train. So women are designed to train men. I just learned that a long time ago. That's bad. That's a bad joke. Yeah, that's one of the king of bad jokes. Please don't take that serious. That's why more cats have diabetes and more dogs have hypoglycemia. But anyway,
That's why cats like to stay home and dogs like to go out.
yeah, they don't like to go out. They like, well, they're going to keep the home. The dogs are going to be kicked out and get the dog house. The cats are going to get the home, just like the female. So anyway, I'm teasing, but anyway, so she's upset with him and labeling him an alcoholic and saying he's an alcoholic. Now, his friend who drinks with him, who gets along with him and has some fun with him, doesn't label him an alcoholic. He labels him a friend for having a drink. But the wife does. So here's what I want you to get. It's really fun. We project labels on people we don't know how to communicate with. And we project labels on some people that do things more than we're willing to face we do, until we can see we do the same thing in another form. And we project labels on people when we don't know how to communicate what we want in terms of their values. I'm not, I have people that if I do things that challenge their value, they label me this way. If I do things that support their value, they label me another way. Let me give you an example. I have some of my students that are pretty similar to myself. They love to study, they love to learn, they love to teach and counsel and help people. They see me as dedicated and perseverant and, hardworking.
Look at Dr. John, I'm sorry, just people are texting. There is a concept of mental illness.
I'm getting there. Hang in there. But remember, those are also labels that psychiatrists like to put so they can sell a drug sometimes.
Agreed.
Okay, now, because I work with people that have those same things, and then we dissolve them. And then when we do, we find out what was really behind them. And then they don't have those labels anymore. So beware of labels, because you just stuck yourself and now there's no reason to work with it. So anyway.
The second we get frustrated with somebody, the easiest thing to do is slap a label, put them on the next train out of here.
That's it. That's not going to get you what you want. By the way, you'll never have a free consciousness nor an open heart judging somebody. All you'll have is emptiness. You never win judging. Just know that. You'll win by loving and learning how to love the parts of yourself that they represent and what they're trying to teach you. We attract something in our life to make us break our addictions to the opposite. Anytime you have a trait that you dislike, you're addicted to its opposite. That's why you're labeling it. And if you're addicted to people praising you, you're going to label somebody critical. If you're addicted to somebody supporting you, you're going to have people that challenge you. If you're addicted to somebody that is saying only positive things, you're going to have the criticizer in your life to break your addiction, to teach you how to break through and see both sides of life. Because otherwise we stay juvenilely dependent on fantasies of one-sidedness I mentioned. So anyway, if somebody comes along with a different set of values to me, they'll label me pig-headed, rigid, stuck. My same behavior, two different people will see completely different. If I do things that support somebody's value, they'll call me dedicated, disciplined, and focused. If I do things that challenge their value, they'll call me pig-headed, rigid, and stuck. I am doing the same behavior. They're projecting different labels when they project their values onto me. So beware of those. Now, if this person's being diagnosed as bipolar condition or dissociated identity disorder or possibly schizophrenia or something, no doubt about that's got work to be done. But if you don't love them for who they are, they're not going to be who you love. Now, if you're going to be with them, the wise thing to do is to find out what their values are. Find out what they're dedicated to. Because you can calm down a lot of, see, the reason why we have these conditions, if you look very carefully, when people are living by priority and they feel that life is on the way and they feel they're fulfilling what they value most, the blood glucose and oxygen goes into the forebrain. When it goes in the forebrain to the ventral medial prefrontal cortex, which is the seat of the self, according to many researchers, you are objective, you're self-governed, you become resonant, you become resilient, adaptable, you become productive. You expand your horizons. But if you don't feel you're able to fulfill your highest value and you don't know how to see things on the way, you'll go into your amygdala, you'll become proud, addicted to your own beliefs, project fantasies onto people, and throw labels on people. So find out what their values are and help them find a way of getting their executive center back online, because most all the psychiatric conditions are demonstrating executive center decline, demyelinization, and amygdala heightened. And that's because they're not doing something that's meaningful. If you're not pursuing challenges that inspire you, if you're not filling your day with deeply meaningful things, you're going to end up being debaucherous, you're end up being irrational, you're going to end up with the ABCDs of negativity, and you're going to be labeled. And you can take that same individual, find out what they value, help them prioritize their life, structure their life, and change some of those labels and rebuild the brain. The brain's neuroplastic. So just because they got a label doesn't mean that that's their final destiny. It just means that that's where they are at this moment. I've seen so many people that I had a child that was labeled ADHD. And when he walked in my room, he was running back and forth and back and forth and back and forth nonstop. His mom just ignored him. I was sitting there going like this, like a ping pong match, back and forth as fast as he could in a 7 by 10 foot room, or an 8 by 10 foot room. And I asked the mother something. Now, he'd been diagnosed ADHD. He'd been put on Ritalin. He's been given a label. I asked the wife, go to a moment where and when you perceive your son present, focused, and without the signs of ADHD. And she goes, I don't know. I said, go to a moment where you perceive him stable and focused, attentive. And she said, okay, when he's playing with his train set. I said, does he love trains? She says, he loves trains. I said, I asked her a question. In his room, are there pictures of trains, magazines of trains, books on trains, train sets? And is there things in trains? She says his room is covered in trains. Does he love spending time with his train? Yes, we have to stop him from doing it so he can do his chores and other things. Is he energized by trains? Yes. When he gets money by any means, is that what he wants to buy? Trains. Is he organized? He's got everything organized with his trains. Is he disciplined? He plays with his trains. Does he think about, visualize, and talk about his trains? Nonstop. Is it when he wants to talk to other people, is he talking about trains? Yep. Is his goal to work with train? Yep. Is that what he wants to read? Yep. And when he reads, is he engaged? Yep. Does he have ADHD symptoms when he's reading about trains and playing trains? No. I said, the kid's running back and forth while I'm getting this from the mom. I stopped and I asked the kid, the young boy, I said, what's the longest train you've ever seen? How many cars does it have? The kid stopped running, looked up and thought. I said, how many cars does it have? You know how to count? About 350 cars. I said, how many cars were flatbed cars? 50. How many were box cars? 100. How many were tankers? Over 100. How many were carrying cars, transporting cars? Few. As I was asking questions on that, he was not running. He was attentive. He was focused because he had a concentrated value system. And some kids have a very concentrated value system that doesn't match what the parents expect, nor the counselors, nor the teachers. And they can't see how the classes they're taking match their values. And so they're disconnected. But you get to find out what they're inspired by, and man, they're present. So I said to the mother, what class does he take in school? Well, he takes sociology, he takes this, he takes that, he takes this. I asked the kid, here's your homework. I want you to go to the Chip channel where there's this long train where they unload from the ships onto the trains. I want you to calculate the width of the trains, the rails, the thickness of the rails, the height of the rails. I want you to do the math. So I was training him on math. I want you to go and look at every country and every language on all the cars to find out what part of the world these are coming from so you can study sociology. I went in there and I asked him, what are the languages? I want you to study and make a list of all the languages so you can learn languages and how to communicate to people. Because if you're going to own a train someday, you're going to be working with people in all different languages. I kept linking things back to his highest value. He was focused. He asked his mom, let's do that. He did the project. He didn't show signs of ADHD. As long as he was working on what he could connect was important to him. And sometimes we project our values onto our kids or our spouses or our loved ones, don't know what their values are, expect them to be a certain way, and project narcissistically and expect them to live in our values and eventually get the ABCDs and negativity and throw labels on people. That's not the most effective way of achieving what you want and sharing your love with people. So watch out for labels.
Okay, Dr. John, you got to go now? You got 2 more minutes?
I got 2 minutes.
Let's just go to the closing segment quickly. Again, thank you for coming on tonight. I know it's short. We have so much more to discuss. There's so many more questions. I'm sorry for all the people that are waiting. There's just a tremendous amount of questions and we couldn't get to all of them. But hopefully Dr. Demartini will come back and give us some more of his time. We really appreciate that. I'm going to go to the closing. Again, there's so much to say. I'm just going to pass it over to Menachem and then Dr. Demartini, if you can leave some words and we'll wrap it up there. Coach Menachem.
I want to thank you very much. The clarity is really amazing, and there's a lot of work, especially for those beginners listening to this the first time. A lot to think about. See, where am I? What does my life look like? Why does it look that way? And I do want to mention for those who are interested, whether the facilitator's on or those who want to have groups or one-on-one, you can always reach out, coachmenachem@gmail.com, and maybe we'll put something together in Mitzvah Hashem. But looking forward to working together in Mitzvah Hashem. Thank you.
Dr. John Demartini, you want to leave with a closing statement?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for letting me be with you tonight. I see my loved ones. I see Samuel all the way from Melbourne, Australia, and Susan, all some of the other people that are here. I don't get to see everybody who's online here, but so thank you. The magnificence of who you truly, authentically are is far greater than any fantasies you'll ever impose on yourself. So give yourself permission to be you in a world that wants you not to be. And if you don't prioritize your life and fill your day with inspiration, what really inspires you? Your day is going to fill up with things that don't. They're going to inspire you. And the symptoms of desperation are not mistakes. They're not flaws in the divine plan. They're feedback mechanisms to let you know that you've strayed away from your authentic self. That's all.
Wow.
Wow, powerful words. Okay, everybody, thank you for coming on. Again, if anybody wants to be in touch with any facilitators, or you can go obviously Dr. John Demartini's website, where it has hundreds of videos and tons of, this is all, we're tasting little glimpses. This is the conversation we just touched about, mental illnesses is probably, we can go so much deeper than, let's keep that in mind. And hopefully people can reach out to the facilitators, email Coach Menachem, we can be in touch with them. And again, thank you very much, Dr. John, for coming on. And hopefully your office will give us some more time. Your office has a very tight schedule. So
yeah, I'm by the minute most days, but thank you for giving me this time and appreciate it. Love all of you, and hopefully see you again.
Okay, everybody, see you next week, same time, same place, with Rabbi Daniel Katz from Israel. Everybody have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.